Welcome one, welcome all, ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals, and our non-binary pals. Welcome to another exciting episode of Witches Movie Coven. And tonight, I am Patty Negri. Not Patty Negri. I am actually, in fact, one of your hosts. Richard-Lael is my first name. If I were just Richard, I would be a. That's right. I am known as the Gentleman Psychic. I have been seen on Ghost Adventures. I have been seen, as Patty says, on bathroom walls across America. I am known as the Gentleman Psychic. I'm a psychic and a medium. I used to be a psychic and a small, but I gained some weight. However, since I am not Patty Negri, so I should introduce you to the rest of our beautiful coven. We'll start over with the lovely Miss Heather Greene.
Oh, me first. Okay. I am Heather Greene, and I am the author. I got to put these guys down so I can show you my book. Hang on a second. You guys stand there. I am the author of Lights, Camera, Witchcraft. It is the critical history of witches in American film and television, and you can get it right there. And I am also an editor at Llewellyn Worldwide, working with wonderful authors on witchy topics and occult topics, as well as a journalist in the media, also covering the same type of topics. And I am a member of this wonderful coven, and I'm so excited to be here this Wednesday to talk about a little Shakespeare.
And then at the lower portion of your screen, the very handsome, the very shadowed with his glasses, Mr. Jason Mankey. Mr. Jason Mankey, everyone.
I am Jason Mankey, author of 10 books for that publisher Heather was just talking about. This is not my latest book. It's just that happened to be here by my computer. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say. I'm just happy to be back because I was gone last week.
We're happy to have you
It
back.
feels like a
We
month.
missed you.
It feels like a month.
There was no one to even hex. We missed you.
Oh.
Speaking of hexes, Miss Courtney Buckley is somewhere in the nether region on the other side of whatever. She says she has router problems, and not because she didn't do her homework, but she says she'll pop in when she can. So Courtney Buckley will be here when she can. But you might notice that Miss Patty Negri looks a little bit different, not only because I'm sitting in that chair, but also because Miss Tabitha Meadows is right here. One of our longtime favorite guests. Welcome, Tabitha.
Hello, and thank you, Richard-Lael. I appreciate you. I am Tabitha Meadows. I am a medium and psychic, and I'm excited to be here tonight. I am here for the hurly-burly. Yeah.
Oh, the hurly-burly. Well, speaking of which, Heather Greene, speaking of which.
Which?
Speaking of which, the hurly-burly. Something wicked this way comes. We are going to be discussing a classic film. How can it be classic? It's from 2021. How can it already be classic? I have I have underwear older than that film. How is it going to be?
TMI.
I know, it's true. How is it such a classic? The reason it is a classic is because we are doing a cursed play known as Macbeth by William Joseph Shakespeare, as in Shakespeare. That's another story for another day. Anyway,
There she is.
I'll have you know, Richard-Lael, I did do my homework. Thank you very much.
I will be cursed after all. Yes.
Cursed while discussing a cursed play, Jason. Is that like a double curse?
Yes, and a negative times a negative equals a positive.
Double,
Jason.
toil and trouble.
She did her homework.
Well, that was my one quote, so don't come back to me.
Well, you know what? I before we actually get into the play, maybe we should talk a little bit about the play being cursed, because according to legend, when one is in a theater, one should never utter that word. They go to the point where actors will say the Scottish play so that they won't even utter the name of Macbeth. And There is
The show's cursed.
it is cursed. The show is cursed. What are we going to do? Speaking of curses, though, and this very cursed show, I think if our producer is back, he may not be. We have a clip from someone in a theater who dared to speak the words.
Courtney, Richard-Lael.
Hi.
Healy.
Yes. Do you know any
Yes.
of Macbeth?
Into
You're
the
never
woods.
supposed to utter Macbeth in a theater.
That's
so
right.
I think we should read from Macbeth.
Richard-Lael. What you're bringing in superstitions.
Let's see. Let's find a good. Let's find a good one. Macbeth.
It's going crazy.
Yes, we're gonna read Macbeth.
Tempt the
Quotes.
fate.
What about some Romeo, Romeo? Wherefore art thou,
No.
Romeo?
No, the Scottish play is the one that is cursed.
Fair is foul and foul is fair. Oh wait, what is that? Macbeth.
That's
M-A-C.
Macbeth. That's the three witches. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
going crazy. It wants you to go on the stage.
I want you to go on stage, and I want you to. Let's see. What is there? Witches. Quote.
Yeah, no, do the witches. Fair is the foul fair.
That ended abruptly, but that was fabulous. And Ms. Courtney she was scared alone, and she did go on that stage, and she experienced some ghosts that evening, didn't she?
That night was horrific, and I'm pretty sure was it after that, one of those giant chandeliers in that theater shut off. There was 3 of them. One of them shut off, and it was confirmed afterwards. They brought in an electrician and everything, and it was confirmed afterwards that it should not have happened. And then I also got stuck in the elevator coming up from the horrific basement.
No.
So it was terrible. And thank you, Richard-Lael. As if I like the introduction where you claim that I dared to go on stage. It makes me sound so, exciting. And really, it was Richard-Lael torturing me and trying to make me do the terrible things while I was screaming.
She was screaming. It was fun, but
In fairness, Courtney, you are really fun to torture
Well, thanks. And now,
because you're so horrible while being tortured.
in case
Just
anyone
absolutely.
in case anyone in the comment section is wondering where the rage for all my hexes comes from, it's Scared and Alone.
So speaking of Scared and Alone and Macbeth, we are specifically doing the 2021 version with Denzil Washington. Normally, Ms. Patty Negri would toss that over to me, where I would give an unbiased synopsis. So since she's not here to toss that to me for an unbiased synopsis, I think I'm going to do a biased one.
Beautiful.
Right? Here we go. So here is the plot of Macbeth. The king had won against all of these rebels who had posed a threat to the kingdom. He beat off 1,000 men to protect the kingdom. I've done that too. I have done that. I can relate. So his 2 generals, Macbeth and Macduck, Macbeth and Macduck they are celebrating their victory. They meet at the road. These 3 whats, whos, wheres, Heather?
Which?
Yes.
Exactly.
And which?
Which, who, what, where? They meet these 3 witches, which of course they predict that Macbeth is going to be king. However, Macbeth his children will not precede him, but Macduck's children will precede him on the throne. And so Macbeth goes back and he tells his power-hungry wife that he is bound to be king. And she formulates a little plan. And, she supports her husband. She's ambitious and she wants the best for him. So she tells him, hey, kill your boss. Kill your boss. Why not? So he goes in. He, in fact, kills the boss. And the servants they've been drugged. The wife has drugged them. He brings the sword back and she says, you idiot. That's Mike Shakespeare. You idiot. You were supposed to leave the swords there. So she brings the swords back in. She plants these swords on the sleeping bodies of her poison victims. And then the guard comes in and says, oh, there's been an assassination. And Macbeth says, I will go in and kill those traitors. And so he kills the traitors. And then, of course, one of the sons actually ends up by fleeing away, and he's afraid for his life. So he ends up by escaping. And because there are no heirs, Macbeth ends up by becoming the Queen of England. I mean, the King of England. I mean, Scotland. That was Queen James, by the by. Becomes the King of Scotland. But unfortunately for him, he starts to go mad. He starts to go crazy. He starts to question everything and everyone. And so he decides that he's going to kill Macduff and the sons. Well, more death, more murder, more mayhem. And so one son escapes, runs away in the night. The problem is now this king is really going crazy, and he starts seeing ghosts, like Courtney on Scared and Alone, seeing ghosts. And meanwhile, the wife is trying to play it down as if, no, he's not really crazy. He's not really crazy. He's not seeing ghosts. No, he's not seeing ghosts. He's not crazy. Well, the problem is that now then another rebellion comes up, and he doesn't know what he's going to do. So he goes back to the witches, and the witches say, don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. So here's the way that it works is that you will be king until the forest starts walking up the hill, and no one can kill you born of a woman. No one can kill you born of a woman. You'll be king until the trees walk up the hill. And he thinks, well, the trees are not going to walk up the hill. And how could anyone not be born of a woman? I mean, how? That doesn't happen, right? I mean, we don't know DNA, and we don't know that you can actually grow something in a petri dish. But it's fine. That's those days. So anyway, he goes back. He's confident, but this rebellion is happening, and the wife ends up by unaliving herself because she cannot handle the stress of knowing what she's done. And then, of course, Macbeth becomes much more morose, and he becomes much more dark and much more macabre, as if he could get any more macabre. And then someone comes to the tower, and they say to him, oh, the forest is walking up the hill. And as it turns out, it was the other army disguised as trees, like the killing tree. They were quite literally killing trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so Macbeth is incredibly excited, the fact that he cannot be killed. He knows that he's going to be king. This part of the prophecy has happened, but no person born of a woman can kill him. So he takes his sword and he goes into battle. And then, like a Bond villain, his enemy says, oh, by the way, I was not born of a woman. I was born cesarean. And he gets killed. Then the other son comes back. The Macduff's son comes back, and then everyone is happy because no one is getting murdered. Kingdom restored. William Shakespeare. The end. Whatever. That is what we have from there. And now we move from that biased synopsis. Thank you very much.
Great happiness.
Yes, that
Great
was
happiness.
quite helpful.
Wasn't
Quite
it?
helpful.
I
really
thought it was
was.
very helpful. I understood it clearly. I did. Anyway, Miss Heather Greene, I bet you have some things, some 5 notes that we should know. I mean, if you don't know Macbeth, you will now, right?
Right. And Macbeth is, to come up with 5 things to talk about with Macbeth, or, that's nearly impossible. People have written dissertations on the play and on the movies and on the performances and everything. So, my microphone again. I apologize. I have to swing it around here so you can hear me better now. And so I am going to do a kind of a little brush up and give you a little bit about this movie, the Tragedy of Macbeth. And then we'll go to a little bit about its origin text, just a tiny bit, and then go to two movies that I'd like to point out that are important and interesting. And then I'll talk about its legacy just a little bit, because there's so much to talk about with Macbeth, and I love Shakespeare and reading Shakespeare plays and watching Shakespeare, so it's hard for me to even capture this. But this film, 2021, is by A24. It was directed by Joel Coen. It's the first one he did without his brother Ethan. If you know the Coen brothers movies, you know they are typically odd, dark, often twisted. They got awards for Fargo. That's probably one of their better known ones, but they did other ones like Barton Fink and Raising Arizona and just a ton of movies. So definitely, if you like that kind of twisted, darker kind of angle on movies, see Coen brothers movies. This is the first one Joel did by himself. It was also done by A24, which we've talked about before. Stars Frances McDormand, who has been in other Coen brothers movies, as well as, of course, you've recognized Denzil Washington as Macbeth. And the other interesting, Catherine Hunter was the witch, and all the witches, known as a physical actress. So she's kind of an interesting character, did a very interesting job of the witches. And the other character, I'm just going to bring up one more, and then I'm going to move on because we have other things to talk about. But Harry Melling is in this, which was really funny. Harry Melling, when I saw him, I started laughing. Of course, he is probably best known. There he is behind the king. He is probably most known, although not necessarily recognizable, as Dudley in the Harry Potter movies. But he was also, more importantly, in the way I recognized him first, is he is Edgar Allan Poe in The Pale Blue Eye. So, and I loved him playing that role. So that was really cool. I was like, oh, there he is. Look at him. So that was kind of a cool aspect of this movie. I'll talk about my thoughts on it later. Now, the origins, of course, is the play, the original play written by Shakespeare, or whoever Shakespeare is. Jason, we're not discussing on who Shakespeare. I know there's lots of theories that Shakespeare didn't exist, that he was somebody else, blah, blah, blah.
He was a real person,
Whoever-
just an illiterate.
Whoever Shakespeare is or was or wasn't, it was a play that is attributed to the author Shakespeare. And has been read and redone on the stage, in film, in all forms for centuries. And there is The Simpsons, Marge and her sisters as the three weird sisters. And I'll talk about that. It's from Easy Bake Coven. We can talk about that later. But the original was originally first performed allegedly in 1606 and then published in 1626. So this is damn old in terms of the cultural aspect of it. It has lasted for this long, over and over, and it is. Many of Shakespeare's plays have a long legacy, of course. We know them, they're performed. You can name them by heart, even if you're not a Shakespeare person. Macbeth has a power that is different. It has a different type of a legacy than many of his other ones. It has got wrapped up in the witch hunts and the lore and the love and hate relationship with witches through the centuries. You have Henry Fuseli doing a famous painting, and a lot of the paintings are reminiscent of or pulled from Shakespeare's replication of witchcraft and witches. You have replications of Lady Macbeth in paintings. You have the Shakespeare himself pulling from real witchcraft where he potentially could. How much was actually real? I'll talk about that in a second. But it was Goya and all these artists, and then eventually into film, you get Macbeth over and over again, to the point where Macbeth becomes something more than the play, to the point where it becomes represented in many different forms. And I'll get to that in a second. But the play has a tremendous legacy. And the three witches, specifically the Weird Sisters, are in Western culture the most important witches in the representation of witchcraft, culturally speaking, throughout history. And I often say that the Wicked Witch of the West is the most influential. That's an American culture. That's specifically here. In Western culture, the representation and the creation of witches and witchcraft is Macbeth is the most important one to understand. Now, what other films that I want to notice? First of all, 1948 was really the first notable American cinematic rendition, adaptation of this play. It was done by Orson Welles. Orson Welles loved Macbeth, and he loved being creative and weird. And so he created first something called Voodoo Macbeth. It was a stage play of Macbeth set in Harlem. You cannot see it anymore. There are some clips. It was a stage play, so there are some photographs you can find. I'm sorry, it was set in Haiti. I made a mistake about that. The play was actually performed in Harlem. But there was a film in 2021 that you can watch that was about the making of Voodoo Macbeth. So that's something interesting you can go look at. But he decided, and he tried over and over to get Hollywood to make a Macbeth movie, and he finally got it in 1948. It's actually pretty bad, pretty boring. But he has a really interesting take, and that's why I want to bring it up, because he envisions the witches as druid priestesses. He envisions the battle between Macbeth, the witches, Lady Macbeth, and the powers that be as a battle between the old religion and the new religion. It's very subtle, and he's very upset in an interview. He was very upset that nobody got it, that the movie did so poorly. So and I'm like, well, it's because you did a bad job and it wasn't well represented. But that was his concept. And if you know that's his concept, rewatch it, you can actually see the visually how he's doing that. But it wasn't clear and nobody got it. And so that was the end of that. But that's one of the first representations of the old religion, as it were, in Hollywood's history. So it's kind of interesting. Then in 1957 and 1960, we had another version that got awards. It was the first live telecast of a Shakespeare play on television, Hallmark Hour. They did it, Macbeth again. And then it was so well received that they filmed it in Scotland in 1960. It got all kinds of Emmys. It actually is pretty good. It's actually a very watchable version of Macbeth. Even if you're not into Shakespeare, it's a pretty watchable version, all kinds of awards. So that's another notable one in our American filmic history, cinematic history. So those are the two. Now, last thing is a legacy. I talked already about how it's an old play and how it's the most important and influential. Is Jason, I just read your thing. That's true. I don't think the Hallmark Hour was like the Hallmark Channel. I think we're talking about two separate things here.
For sure. Clearly.
Clearly.
I'm looking forward to the Lori Loughlin version to come out soon. Just in time for Christmas.
Just in time for Christmas. Let's do Macbeth. Yes, the new Christmas movie. But the legacy comes forward here because of the Weird Sisters, and it's similar to what happened with the Wicked Witch of the West. Eventually, Macbeth it has such a stamp on our culture in so many ways because of the lore, because of the curse, because of everything. I mean, we didn't say Macbeth in the theaters either. I mean, it's such a legacy that it's transcended the borders of its actual text. It's transcended the borders, and the Wicked Witch of the West that's happened to her too. So you have movies. You have Something Wicked, This Way Comes. That's a line from the play, is a movie. You have Double, Double, Toil and Trouble. There's a movie called that. Not a good movie. We won't talk about that right now. I don't know if we'll review it ever, but it has the Olsen twins in it. It's from the late early 90s.
Holy crap!
Do I remember that one?
You do remember that one. You have, of course, the foul and fair line is in this song of the Witch's Road, which is from Agatha, which just came out. You have other ones. You have Kurosawa doing it. You find it in things like Simpsons. I believe Simpsons actually did a rendition. There's a Kurosawa version of it. And you also have, that's from Easy Bake Coven. That's Marge and her sisters being the trio of sisters. There's a point where they're standing around the cauldron. So the text itself, lines have been pulled out of it. You can read through it, you can hear it, you go, oh, I used that line, I heard that line. And then of course you have the idea of 3 witches standing around a cauldron and doing spells. This stems from this image that Shakespeare created. And just to point out is that Shakespeare, it is thought with most academics at this point believe that Shakespeare, the witches were not specific witches. He wasn't trying to create real magic. He was kind of taking amalgam of what witchcraft was, sort of what he knew, folk magic, and kind of brought it together and created them. And they were supposed to be sort of comical. That's what they believed, that they're supposed to be sort of a, not high comedy, but just sort of a comical parody of the idea of witches back then, is what it originally was supposed to be. There's lots of, discussions on that. That's PhD level discussions we can have, but the legacy is unmatched when it comes to talking about cultural witches in our culture. And so we need to appreciate that and watch a lot of Macbeth carefully without getting cursed.
Well,
that's just snippets. That's just snippets.
I mean, it really is a cultural icon. With that, who would like to go next? I'll pick Courtney. Oh, well, Tabitha. Tabitha's there. Tabitha, you go.
So when I was younger, I think it stuck in my head as much as it did this time around. I guess, because I was a teenager, but being older, I can kind of relate to these people because after about 30 minutes, I was thinking, wow, this is just a bunch of old people talking to themselves about word salad in their heads. So it was more relatable to me now than it was when I was a teenager. And to me, it's just a really, really, really old school. It would be a horror flick because in the time, and the witches there were no tolerance for witches by non-Christians. So for back then, it would have been just absolutely scary and horrific. I know Heather said it was, supposed to be funny, but the content would have been horrifying. So,
If I may, there is a little nugget on this. So during the time of Shakespeare, whether she existed or didn't is another question. But in those days, in the theater, it would be men who played all the roles of women. And so in the original notes, these witches have beards and gnarly teeth. And if you apply that context to the fact that, okay, this is a man. This is clearly a man. This is a man pretending to be a woman, and he's lousy. Then it becomes a little bit more funny. It becomes a little bit more Herman Munster. It becomes a little bit more Uncle Milton. It becomes funnier in that original context, knowing, okay, haha, that's a man playing that witch.
In a lot of the early versions in cinema they were men too. Some of the silent ones, yeah. Same thing.
That's a plot twist. Oh, I thought Rob was going to post that picture. There it is.
There it is. It's like a joke grenade now. You throw it out and then you wait for it to explode.
Right? Well, Miss Courtney, what do you have to say? Oh, go back. This is how it started. This is how it's going. Miss Courtney.
Okay, well, as a theater kid growing up, I did know about the curse of Macbeth, but my very first exposure to Macbeth in its entirety came today when I watched this movie. Obviously, again, as we all saw, I've been traumatized previously by Macbeth, on a personal level. That's great. I sat down to watch this, and I thought, as I was watching that, maybe I was having a stroke, because I was looking at the television and they were acting it beautifully, but I could not follow any of the words that were coming out of their mouth at all. And I was reading the subtitles, and then I realized that I was reading the subtitles so intently and like rereading them and trying to process them so hard that I wasn't actually watching the movie in any way, shape, or form. And then all of my brain cells lit on fire, and I felt like I was short-circuiting. Like, I know that this is dramatic, but I'm so genuine. I stared at the TV and I thought something is wrong with me and I'm scared. So I decided to just give up trying to follow anything. It was literally like I was watching something in a foreign language, and I could not follow it at all. So I was gonna just look at it, because as soon as I saw the A24 on the screen, I was like, well, I'm gonna love this because I love them. And I just looked at it and had no idea what was happening any of the time. And then I thought I'd rely on Richard-Lael's beautiful synopsis to understand what was going on. And then I still have no idea. So that's it.
It's hard.
It's
hard.
I can't, and here's the thing, it's like the ADHD suddenly developed dyslexia, and like I was literally looking at, when you say a word over and over again and then the word feels weird in your mouth, like bowl, if you say bowl too many times in a row, then suddenly you're like, what is this language? It was like that, but it was like coming at me. I don't know. I really genuinely was like questioning whether or not I could even do this show tonight, or did I have to go get some kind of a brain scan because something was happening. So there you go. Double toil and trouble. That's my experience.
There you go.
There is a little bit more history, though. So, I go back to this. So, Heather, you brought up about how that in the 48 version, it was the old religion and the new religion, and they were sort of embattled. I went the opposite direction. I grew up Pentecostal. And the funny thing as a Pentecostal was we only read the King James version of the Bible. So when I think of King James, when I think of that time period, I do kind of get it, because it's not modern language. It's not. It's really hard. And I remember as a kid, I threw a fit. I was a kid, 15, 20, 25, whatever. I was a kid. And I fought against reading the New International Version of the Bible, or any other versions that are actually more easy to understand and more actually researched, because I liked the flowery language that did not seem to match the time. But I do understand why Shakespeare would cause people disarray, because it is a foreign language. We are so far removed from that time. But there is one little funny thing about King James. So when King James came to power, his predecessor was Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I was known as King Elizabeth because she was the virginal queen and she took charge. She was seen as being a man. And then King James was the child of Queen Mary of Scots. And then he was taken away from Queen Mary and then raised as a Protestant. And then he became king, and he believed in witchcraft. He literally believed in witchcraft. And he believed that when his marriage boat hit a stormy sea, it was the witches who were coming after him. And then he was so effeminate, they called him Queen James. I'm not making that up. That's the way that it is. So I like to think that Shakespeare might have been kind of tormenting him. Oh, you think about witches? You like witches? You think witches are after you? Maybe they're aliens.
There's a actual quote in the play, and I don't know where it is, where he actually mentions King James, some accident he had by sea. And yes. I don't know where that quote is, but he actually, whether he was tormenting him or trying to entice him, there is absolutely a direct connection there. And Faust was only published like a couple years before this too, for the same reason, because of this deep interest that the crown had in witchcraft. But Yeah, I think you're right. I would.
Want to antagonize nobility because it's a way to get your hand chopped off.
Hmm.
There was no freedom of speech then. So unless you were doing it so subtly that James would have missed it, the witch was probably included in order to go, okay, we know you're interested in this and you've executed many people for it. Let's put it in a play for you.
Well, and it would be a joke, kind of making it a little bit less scary, perhaps. Then, yeah. It's true.
It was political satire, and that remains even to this day. Even if you just do the Cliff Notes, even if you just read it in modern English, even if you just do a 5-minute watch of it on YouTube, it is still very political, and it warns about people who will do anything for power, anything for fame, anything for money. It comes back to bite them. They go crazy. They get paranoid. They start thinking everyone is out to get them. Why is everyone staring at me? Why are you staring at me? Never mind. It was a ghost. I saw a ghost. So it does warn you not to be so heavy-handed, I think is the way that it's trying to say. It was political persuasion then. It still is in play today. Jason, what about you? What say you, sir?
I want to take you back to 1988, the sophomore year of high school. Somehow I, a perpetual B student, C in mathematics, slipped into advanced placement English, much to the chagrin of my guidance counselor and the English department of Gallatin Senior High School. My teacher is Miss Johnston, a very scary old woman who smelled 5 packs of cigarettes, which is what she smoked on a daily basis. My class is a combined class of sophomores and juniors because very few people got into advanced placement English at Gallatin High School. Our lessons that semester were all Shakespeare, and we were handed the gigantic volume of Shakespeare and told to read the plays and then write papers on plays. Oh my gosh. Well, I am scared to death of Johnston, and the only way to get any sort of feedback from her before turning your paper in is to go up to her desk and ask her for comments on your paper. Well, I'm never doing that, and I cannot stand the smell of the woman either. So that's just going to happen. So I struggle for an entire semester trying Shakespeare without any sort of notes about how to read Shakespeare. I read it not knowing that a Moor is a man of color. I was quite confused the entire semester, and I will admit I read every play. Like Courtney, I understood so very, very little about these plays. If you are going to read the play, you will often be befuddled. Seeing them live or in a movie is not necessarily better, but at least you can kind of infer things. I went to see Comedy of Errors last fall in London at the Globe Theatre because my wife and I are both of whoever believes Shakespeare to be. Anyway, we went and we watched the play, and I looked at her at one point and I'm like, I have really no idea what's happening. And she goes, neither do I. But you can by watching how the actors run around. So I felt much like that while watching Macbeth in this new version in 2021. I could only sort of keep up just by seeing what the actors were doing, and then you can make out like every other line of dialogue and stuff. I'm always surprised that none of this is ever put in modern idiom, so it's easier to understand for people who, are watching a movie or the play. People love to dress them up in modern, but they never update the language. They never update the language.
There's the Orson Welles one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be I'm in the minority here, perhaps, but I love Shakespeare. I read the plays for pleasure. I remember not few years after Jason Mankey was talking about in the early 90s, I was working in the film production company, and I had bought myself a whole collection of My Little Pelican versions, and I'd eat lunch and just sit there and read the plays while I was eating my lunch on break. I've read all of them. I have them all upstairs. I can read them and imagine them, and I love them. I just
Now
do.
you're just showing off.
It's weird. It's one of those weird quirks. Like, I tell people I love to read Shakespeare I love to read plays. I will sit down and read any play. I love to read them, but Shakespeare, I just love it. Macbeth is not my favorite play. But
What is your favorite Shakespeare play?
Of the tragedies, Othello is my favorite of the tragedies. And
it got better for me once I understood what a Moor was. But that wasn't until someone told me in Act 3. So it's a while.
And I think my favorite of the others are I love my brain just stopped working. Midsummer's Night Dream. I love A Midsummer's Night Dream.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, and that is just, As You Like It. I mean, any of them, and Much Ado About Nothing. I'm happy. I'm just happy with all of them. The Taming of the Shrew. I'll just watch. I have not read the histories. I have not read the histories, so I will say that those I've loved.
I do love the way the language flows, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're hearing it, sometimes it's absolutely beautiful. It's all set in meter, right? So there's a rhythm and a flow to all the language, and then sometimes, there's enough of it that you really know what he's saying, and those messages are the ones that really stick with you and are beautiful. I like Shakespeare a lot, but I will admit to how muddled by it, especially reading a version without notes that tell you what this means. He invented 1,400 words. I mean, that's really not fair, right? 1,400 words, and oh, you invented a word. How am I supposed to know what that means? Jerk face.
I think from a Macbeth, from a magical standpoint, talking about witchcraft is important, because if you look at the actual play, and it comes out in the second version, in the 57 one, 60, is that not only are the witches part of the magical experience of this movie, but and so is Lady Macbeth, and she's calling on Hecate, and she is calling down the spirits to help her. So it's not just the witches that are involved in magic. And if you look at the movie, the 1957 movie, they use the witches right at the beginning to set the stage, almost as like, this is what's going to happen. And then the witches completely disappear from the movie, and it's all Lady Macbeth and her magic, which changes the dynamic of the movie entirely if you take away the witches. And so that's an interesting difference. But Lady Macbeth is equally involved in magic and spiritual work as the witches are, which is an interesting kind of play on the treatment of women within this movie, because the rest of the play is all about the works of men. So there's an interesting gendered conversation that can be had around this movie as well.
I wish I could participate in that conversation as if I had understood any of that, because it seems fascinating.
I would say also that historically the use of Hecate specifically as the goddess of the witches kind of bucks against trends of the time. Most of the time you're going to see Diana listed as the goddess of the witches. So there's an influence there too. And undoubtedly Hecate is probably the most popular goddess in modern witchcraft. And you get in some ways it stems from her use this play, because that was a very, very revolutionary thing to do in the early 1600s, was to use her as the goddess of the witches.
She has lines even.
Yeah, she's a real character. That's one thing about the 2021 version that's kind of disappointing, because everything is our one witch and her, double jointedness and things. So you don't get this particular goddess who was actually a written character in the play.
Well, I think the presentation, the cinematography were fantastic, regardless of whether
Oh yeah,
The cinematography,
it's a beautiful film.
beautiful.
It's a beautiful film.
I'll say too that one thing that I did notice that I really liked about it, and really I can't consume anything Shakespeare with the exception of when I was a teenager, the Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio. In this one, even though I couldn't understand what they were saying, it sounded like they were speaking their own natural tongue. Like they said their lines so well, they really performed them. Whereas in Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio, they sounded like they were reciting lines versus speaking naturally. So that was something that I did notice, even though it meant nothing to me. But also when I stopped reading the subtitles and actually looking at the movie, I have to agree. I think it was really interesting and very well shot, and it is the type of movie that I would expect to see with the labels that are attached to it. So I will say that. But yeah, oh,
there it is.
But yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say he's like a Shakespeare bad boy, but he's just reciting his lines.
I was just gonna say that I like that they took it's not in color as well. So it put more emphasis on the words that they were saying and the emotion from the words. You know, these were more like spelling.
It was definitely a spell. That's partially why people think it's cursed. So I want to ask you, do you have a favorite version of the Witches or a favorite version? Like, what is your pop culture icon? My favorite pop icon as far as this is Vincent Price in Magic and Witchcraft. I think that was about 1968. And it starts off with the Weird Sisters. Where art thou? Hast thou been killing swine? And then, of course, Vincent Price comes in his quite fetching tone. Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in curses? Witches? Witchcraft? Anyway, that's my favorite. Who has a favorite version of this? Of the Witches or of those three? What's your favorite?
Does Your Highness count?
Sure.
The witches that came out of each other. I don't know if that's real. I don't know anything about Macbeth, even though I watched the whole movie.
No, but it very well can be. That's perfect. 3 witches, 3 fates. Yeah, that makes sense. I think so. Your Highness is perfect in that.
And they do those. The 3 sisters appear, the Weird Sisters, and whether they're the 3 fates, it's a similar construct. Most certainly appear a lot, but I think my favorite is going to have to be The Simpsons and Easy Make Good. I just adored them when she flew with that green face and landed on the cliff and then walked in. Her 2 sisters were there, and they were just I don't even think they recite the lines, but I'm like, oh my god, we just entered Macbeth. I love that. So. But yeah, and then someone said Hocus Pocus. It's another one. It's a legacy that lasts. That witches have 3. There's 3 witches around a cauldron. They've got to have 3 witches. It's a legacy from the fates from this. So it's pretty cool. But I think I'm gonna have to say Simpsons.
Anybody else have a favorite 3 witches trio?
Mine is just art. That picture of the 3 of them and the pointing. The Henry Fuseli, I think, is the artist. That one really sticks with me. And when I think of the play, that's the image that immediately comes to mind. I'm also like Heather. I'm a huge Simpsons fan. So that's always really fun. But it's that image with the pointing.
Tabitha?
I don't have any one that I can think of that really comes to mind that I can. I mean, I do love the 3 witches and Hocus Pocus, but I mean, I love them all, so there's not one I can hone in on.
Okay, that's fine. We are getting close to that time. Courtney Buckley, do you have any quotes for us?
Okay, full disclosure, I pulled these off of IMDb because
I love it. I love it.
There is, of course, double, toil and trouble, which I know off the top of my head. And then also by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. And then the one other one that I liked was out, brief candle. I know, mind you, hold on. I'm going to read this. It sounds cool to my ears and to my eyes. It looks cool. I have no idea what it means. Out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. The end.
Death.
Those my quest.
Beautiful.
It's good.
I love
That's
that one.
great.
That is beautiful.
That's a good
I
one.
don't know why that's good. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, there's my favorite.
That's beautiful. That is stunning. Well, speaking of Jason's favorite, Jason Mankey, do you have a Mankey movie minute?
Oh, I've got a special one just for you all tonight. I'm excited. I've been like grinning to do this all. Sweet will of Avon, be he bard or but a goat by nobler hand, methinks he be less a man and more a myth. For he died with naught but air in his study, leaving no quill-scratched nor ink-blotted scroll. And who knew not how to christen his own name twice, 'tis suspect, I say. I do lend voice to the chorus of Lord Oxford, noble De Vere, who mayhap penned yon tragedies and comic timings with aid of whispering shades. Yet regardless of whose hand did spill such verse, I find with lines a spark divine, when once translated into the tongue of mortal men. Forsooth, though mine eyes do scan the page, my mind doth oft wander in confusion. This is Elizabethan tongue, twisted and arcane, doth wrestle with my wits and leaves me vexed. Would that some bold scribe smooth the syntax for our age, 'twould ease the common ear great. Still, what joy it is to watch brave Denzil stage as Macbeth, with voice like thunder and gaze like the storm. He doth tread the path from nobleman to knave, his soul unraveling like thread from a weaver's loom. Stand not all his words, yet his madness speaks plain upon his countenance. And lo, who doth appear but fair Dudders, once of Dursley fame, now grown in visage and fairer in form. I did consult the scroll of Wikipedia more than once to mark his part, for such is the curse of grown child stars. One knoweth them when they cast off childish things. What witchery is this? The weird sisters are now but one, yet one is thrice strange and thrice is foul. With voice like rusted iron and limbs like dance like spidery shadows, she bends and writhes as nursed by Hecate herself. Or else hath drank deeply of nettled tea and cakes. Now must I confess a truth most chilling. Lady France McDermott strikes fear into my soul. Were she to command me to leap from cliff or cleave my kin, I should trembling. That she does coax brave Macbeth to her most foul, 'tis no stretch of fancy. Nay, I did not grasp every line of her intent, and perchance she called for carnal sport rather than blood. But who can say? Not forget the stark spectral sets, bare as a beggar's pantry. Mayhap Coen had no coin, for Denzil's price is surely deep. Perchance he did task a troop of school. Here's a shilling. Go forth and craft me a castle. Black and white hue, too, gives feel of olden tube visions, in homage to the strange dramas of yore. 'Tis bold, 'tis artful, 'tis, how you say, pretentious. Should thou see this Macbeth, but be warned, he is no burgher of golden arches. And if thou claimest he is, I may believe thee, for truth be told, I grasp not half of what was said.
Like just now. Well done, Jason. Huzzah!
Wait, no burger of golden arches? Did you say that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
That's got to be a quote. That's got to be a quote.
That was hard to do. Oh, yes.
Good job. Good job.
That deserves a standing ovation. I cannot stand, but I would.
Understand what I was saying as
Right.
I put it into Shakespearean talk.
Right.
That's fantastic.
So I guess since nobody understands it, except for maybe Heather and Tabitha and me, wait a minute, 3 of us understand it. So we should vote on this film and Shakespeare in large. What do you say? So one's up, one's down. What do you say out there? Anyone out there in the audience? I have my wand up on this one. It looks like it looks like we're all up for Shakespeare. We're all up for this movie. Courtney is all over the place.
I'm down for Shakespeare because stop giving me a headache. And I don't know. This movie was interesting to look at, but that was it. I don't know anything else about it.
Denzel is terrific in this movie.
It was acted beautifully.
Like, that power crazy as the movie unfolds. The performances are great. This movie looks good. This is a good movie.
I just don't know what happened in it. So
yeah.
Undecided.
Watch,
and the subtitles don't help.
Watch it
at all.
Notes. If you
here's the thing, I reached out for help. I called for help. I reached out to Tabitha. I texted producer Rob, being like, my brain is actually ignited. Like my smoke detectors are going off. I don't know what to do. And everyone sent me. They were like, here's this. Watch this YouTube. I cannot watch one more thing about it because even Jason's beautiful Mankey movie minute that was clearly very well thought out. I thought this is it. Call 911 because there's nothing left. I have nothing left to give to Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
That's who's getting cursed tonight. Shakespeare. Down with Shakespeare.
A curse on all your houses.
So
something wicked
over here. We have wands down for Shakespeare, neutral for the movie, wands up for the play. Should have been called Murder and Mayhem in the Tower of Babel. Robert Hicks says wands neutral. Marty Price, wands up. Kevin says up. Scared and Alone says wands and daggers up. Bravo, we have on that one. I think that was it. Anybody else? Well, what are your wands? Are they up and down? Mary Jane King says wands up for it. So it looks like we're mostly up. It looks like we're a winner on this one. Courtney's the odd person out, I think.
Whatever.
We forgive you because you're so pretty.
How does it feel to have irrelevant opinions, everyone?
Heather, what do we have next week?
We will be doing next week. Give me a second.
I'll give you 13.
13 Ghosts.
Which version are we doing?
We are doing the more recent one, which was 2001, I believe.
And remind me, the fellow had a very, very common last name. What was his name? Yes, I know.
Lillard. Lillard?
Maybe. It was rather common. It was a common name. So we will be watching that next week. You can go home and watch it. You can watch it. If you haven't watched it, rewatch it. Watch 13 Ghosts with Matthew Lillard for next week. Does anybody have anything going on that you'd like to tell us? Where can we find you?
Next week, I will be at Pagan Unity Festival, which is why I'm missing the show. And the week after that, I will be at 8 Wind, a Druid festival in California, just outside of Sacramento.
Heather Greene.
I am not going anywhere anytime soon, but I am working on Mystic South, which is less than 2 months from now. We have the programming up and tickets are available, and there are once again hotel rooms. So please come join us in Atlanta in July from the 11th through the 13th at the Crown Plaza Ravinia. It's Mystic South. Lots of witchy and pagan and metaphysical people all getting together to do stuff and learn stuff.
It's great. It's a great festival.
Miss Courtney.
I'll be trying to remember my own name, I guess. I don't know. Nothing. No, I have nothing. I have nothing coming up. It's almost.
She doth have nothing going on.
Miss Tabitha.
This weekend, I will be at Bell Grove and King George for Spirit Squad with Sam with Sam Baltrusis, having a good time with my squad. So I'm looking forward to that. nothing else after that. But you can reach me on the face of the book and for private readings and that sort of thing. So thank you.
And I am Richard-Lael. I am the Gentleman Psychic. I am easy to find. Thank you very much. I will be going to Scotland myself. So, and you can join me for the Sacred Tours. This is next year. If you go on to tracelesstours.com and then you go under Sacred Tours, you can find me. So maybe I will go and steal a crown from a friend. Who knows? Maybe I will. Okay, well, there's one more thing left to do, and that is what we three witches, hand in hand, we cackle through the sullen land.